You get me, got you. You get me, feel it, you. You get me, got you. You get me, feel it, you. You get me, got you.
Hello, nice to be with you. We are talking politics and religion without killing each other. I am your host, Corey Nathan, and it is an honor to be a part of the Democracy Group. It's a network of podcasts that examines what's broken in our democracy and how we can work together to fix it. It was great to have Liz Joyner and Kami Akavan on the show here recently. Just a real treat to be among my colleagues from the Democracy Group. But today, I am just going to dive right into it. So let me just be super candid. The us versus them mindset is killing all of us. I, I use the word killing. You're killing me in the title, and sometimes, most of the time, thank God, that's figurative and not literal. But just this last week, we saw it very tragically, literally, a state lawmaker, a state legislator in Minnesota, and her husband were assassinated. There were attempts on the lives of another state legislator in Minnesota, and other attempts. Apparently, the killer stopped at two other homes, but was fended off and finally caught. So the us versus them mindset is killing all of us, and in some cases, tragically, quite literally. So, what I want to think through is what we can do about it. The us versus them mindset and what we can do about it. And here's what we'll be going through. Recognize what us versus them thinking is, especially when I'm doing it. Two, I want to begin to think specifically more than just generally. And I'll go into detail on all of these things. Three, when we see it or when we engage in it ourselves, it's okay to name it. Us versus them. Whether you use that particular phrase or some other way of talking about it, name it. Four, there's a way to shift our disposition, the way that we're talking to somebody, sometimes physically, if you're hanging out with somebody, from facing off to more of a side by side approach. And then fifth, sometimes you just got to know when to walk away. All right. So the us versus them mindset. What is it? Let's recognize what it is. I'll give you a quick story. I've shared already, and I've talked in some of the conversations that we've had on here with others, that I've gotten in the habit of posting on different social media platforms direct quotes from the Constitution and other founding documents, whether it's from the articles or from the Bill of Rights, from, in this case, it was from the Declaration of Independence. And it's amazing, these posts get more engagement. I'd love to see a lot of engagement, a lot of likes and comments when I post a picture of my two kids from 14 years ago when they were still cute, right? But that doesn't get as much engagement when I just do a direct quote with no commentary from, in this case, the Declaration of Independence. The quote is, "When a long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing invariably the same object evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. The history of the present King of Great Britain is a history of repeated injuries and usurpations." I think that's how you say it. Anyway, usurpations, all having in direct object the establishment of an absolute tyranny over these states. And boy, oh boy, that was that was very objectionable to some of my friends. Got a whole lot of comments, a whole lot of engagement on that one. And one of the comments came from a buddy that I used to work out with. Our kids went to school together at one point. Always experienced him as a pretty quiet, reserved guy, but very nice, had nice engagements, sometimes had, talks after, we worked out together. So, talks afterwards, getting a coffee or drink or something like that. And he comments to this just direct quote. He says, "Where were you all the last 4 years?" So where were you all the last 4 years? So that's another version of saying this that you may have heard on radio shows or your favorite pundits. And where was your outrage when? It's a very commonly used uh, response that puts on different costumes, but it's they're all versions. There are a lot of different versions of the same thing. And he says, "Where were you all the last 4 years?" He goes on to say, "Nonsense. It's becoming quite clear to America that bias is radical on one side, your side. You all act like yellow jackets who just had their hives stepped on, and logically thinking people see it. I know you are logical as well, but you fail to control yourselves and use that logic to come out ahead on the issues. Take a damn chill pill and realize the wrongs on your team as well." So came out swinging, and this dude, when we're hanging out in person, never acted that way. But man, talk about bees in a bonnet. He's got some bees in his bonnet, right? So he came out swinging. Now, me being me, Jersey boy that I am, I wanted to swing right back. I could have taken the bait and reacted in kind. And I got plenty of ammo I could have thrown at him. Believe me. Believe me. I really wanted to, I got to tell you. But you have I have to recognize what it is, especially when I'm doing it. So I'll share with you my reply a little bit later. But the point is to recognize what it is. The point is to recognize when someone is engaging in us versus them. And it couldn't be more clear. There are so many key words that jump out at me. Where were you all? You all. There on one side, your side, he says, logically thinking people see it. Control yourselves. Wrongs your team. There's so many words that he was using that indicate an us versus them mentality. So I just have to recognize it. And then in this case, because listen, I haven't always used restraint, and I've just like come out. I shared that story from a few weeks ago when I just, some guy I was sitting at a table and the bar was next to us. I was sitting at a table with a buddy of mine. The bar was next to us. The guy at the bar turns around and pipes up, and I came out swinging right then and there. I didn't know who he was. I didn't have any questions. I didn't engage in dialogue. I just came out with, "Let me fucking tell you something," So I came out swinging. So I haven't always used, in this case, I did use restraint. I wanted to respond in kind, but I didn't in this case. But the point is, recognize it when you see it, especially if you're about to engage in it. I'll give you another example. A similar post. About a week prior to the one from the Declaration of Independence, I posted a piece of the First Amendment. Congress shall make no law. Later in the the First Amendment. Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people peaceably to assemble. And again, man, I posted a beautiful picture of my dog, a little video of the dog doing a happy dance, Nothing. I get nothing. I get crickets. This one, oh, people will go crazy. Hey, guys, I touched the button. This is just unacceptable behavior on my part, quoting with no commentary from the Constitution, from the Bill of Rights. So several of the first comments were pictures of people. Listen, it was right around the time that ICE first started going to Home Depots around LA. There was one particular incident not too far from here, especially in downtown. And then there were protests. This is, widely shared news stories, but not all of the news, all of what was actually happening. The most dramatic pictures were the most broadly shared, peaceful protesters, peaceable assembly, people exercising the First Amendment rights. Doesn't quite get the same run. It's not as clickbaity as, sharing some of the pictures. So, there were indeed some people who were turning over cars, burning Waymos, breaking, windows in storefronts, painting graffiti on the sides of buildings. So there was definitely that. But in reality, In reality, it was about a fraction of what we see anytime the Dodgers win the World Series or the Lakers win the NBA championships. LA knows how to do this. LA's seen their share of unrest and violence, and the local police know how to deal with it. Speaking of sports, by the way, let me just take a step back. I dove right into it, and I didn't share like, hey, this is a cool hat, and everybody knows I'm a Mets fan. But this is the Brooklyn Cyclones, their high A team. Isn't that cool? Anyway, I'm very proud of my New York Mets, and their minor league teams are pretty rocking too. So Brooklyn Cyclones. Anyway, so we knew what was going on. So I post this quote from the First Amendment: Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech or the press, right of people peaceably to assemble. And first several comments were from guys that I know are at the very least Trump adjacent, if not full on, vocal supporters of Donald Trump. And they posted pictures of, a guy waving a Mexican flag in front of a burning Waymo or something. And his comment was, they are so grateful to have an opportunity at the American dream. Obviously snarky, sarcastic. The other one, there people, doing graffiti and other illegal activity. And this other person's comment was, sure looks like peaceful assembly. Now, why is that where my friends go? Certain friends of mine, why is it that that's where they go in this instance? I simply quoted from the First Amendment. Yes, I quoted that and shared it on Facebook on a certain day when this was very, very high profile in the news. So what is the point in posting those pictures and making those types of comments? It is clearly to say, this is my interpretation. And listen, write into me if you think I'm wrong. Write into me if you think I'm reading this the wrong way. But here's the thing. The comments are, okay, this is what they do. Posting a picture of people that these fellows who are commenting that, listen, I consider to be friends. One I graduated high school with, one guy I used to go to church with, and our kids used to go to the Christian school together. So I know these people and I have an affinity for them. Yeah, sometimes they do things and say things that annoy the shit out of me, but it is what it is. Like I still have some type of relationship with them. So yeah, posting a picture, not some thoughtful comment about or question about, why are people protesting or engaging on the issue itself that's at hand, over which the people are protesting, not pointing out the fact that the vast majority of people, like last weekend with the No Kings rallies, are exercising their First Amendment rights to peaceably assemble, their First Amendment rights to speech, but posting pictures of, the incidents. And listen, we all agree violence is uncalled for. Destruction of property is illegal and should be prosecuted. And by the way, on that thread, not a single person was supporting or even excusing the violence that occurred. Everybody on all sides of the spectrum were saying the same thing. Violence should be prosecuted. Illegal activity should be prosecuted. These shenanigans should not be tolerated. And by the way, LAPD, Sheriff's Department here in California, yes, it's not to say that this stuff wasn't happening. It was. But the LAPD knows what to do. They have plenty of experience doing it. And yeah, there were disruptions, people shutting down the 101, uncalled for. I don't support it, right? We can agree on that. But that's the exception to the rule. There's plenty of people who at that time, before the No Kings rally, were exercising the right to peaceably assemble, and they were doing it the right way. So posting these pictures of people that were rioting and civil unrest and illegal activity, what is the point? The point is to say, this is what they do, to create an us versus them dichotomy, to create a sense of partisanship, to create a sense of that's your team, you guys, your people, and my people are the good people. That's the less overt, but clearly with their commentary and their choice of pictures of what they're showing and how they're processing what's actually going on. That the people who object to the ICE raids of Home Depot are rioters. That's the connection that they're making. Okay. So again, number one, recognize what it is. But I'm holding myself accountable here. Sometimes I've gone over the line and engaged in an us versus them mentality. So recognize what it is, especially important when I'm doing it. But recognize when it's happening, when somebody is bringing you into or trying to bring you into an us versus them standoff. Now, what is a way to combat this? Well, one way is to think specifically, not generally. I'll give you a different example. I already referred to the No Kings rally. I found it, listen, there were, in our town, there were at least 2,500 people. They call it the Good Trouble Corner. There have been protests there, gatherings there. I've been living in Santa Cruz Valley for 20, 26, 27 years. I've never seen a rally this large. I've seen a few dozen people on that corner protesting with signs. I've seen even a couple hundred. I have never seen people show up in those numbers. And frankly, I found it encouraging. I found it uplifting. The people were honking their horns and shows of support for the people driving by. There were no disruptions of the traffic on that corner. At least a couple thousand people, if not as many as 3,500 people. So the numbers, it was clearly a huge showing. And it was to me, it was very encouraging, even though I probably am to the center, if not to the right of a lot of people who were there. It was a lot of people protesting the authoritarian impulses of the Trump administration. So that was what it was largely about, but they made it about no kings, not specifically about Trump. Either way, I took a picture. I was like, hey, look, a few thousand of my friends and neighbors, exercising their First Amendment rights. I get a text from somebody I consider a close friend. And the text was, LOL, there's probably 3 full-time workers in that whole group. They can't afford a nice blah, blah, blah. And he goes on to just make disparaging comments. I said, dude, listen, it was a really nice gathering. Whether you agree with them or not, this was people exercising their First Amendment rights to peaceably assemble. And it was peaceable, And by the way, you're wrong, because I saw people who were veterans. I saw people of different ethnic backgrounds. In fact, here's a funny thing. Later that afternoon, I was at a small gathering, about 25, 30 people, where 3 of our city council members were attending, all 3 of whom they technically can't declare for a party for those seats, but they're all Republicans. They're all Fox News watching, so, and they all had what I think is the proper outlook on the No Kings rally, regardless of whether they agree with what they're protesting for. They said it's encouraging to see so many people come out and exercise their First Amendment rights. It's especially encouraging to see that everybody did it in a peaceful way. That's where we should be, right? You agree with it or not, and we've talked about this before. Whether you agree with what somebody is protesting for, exercising their free speech, what their speech is about, it's most important to support it when you disagree with it, not just when you agree with it. This fella, there's probably, he was saying disparaging things about them. And I said, listen, make fun of them all you want, but this is a good thing. People came out, they exercise their First Amendment rights. But then, he keeps on doubling down. He said, he posted a meme, something about No Kings protest, brought to you by the party who, and then he said some disparaging things. And I pointed it out. I said, listen, man, you're saying disparaging things, not just about my neighbors and some friends that I saw there, but you're also now saying disparaging things about me. So just reel it in. And I got to tell you, first of all, I found the irony that he was texting me as I was at this gathering, small gathering of our Republican local representatives. I was there, and he was. He was like making fun of me as if I was one of the hooligans, as he was thinking of it. But what was bothering me was this is a fellow that I'm close with. That we've gone through a lot of life together. And I've been able to rely on him in other areas of my life. So it was troubling that this was a reflex that he had. And yeah, maybe he was joking around, maybe he was just talking trash, but the idea that we're making these generalizations as a way to characterize or mischaracterize people, large groups of people in this way, to me is very troubling. Because when you make these generalizations and then you mischaracterize entire groups of people, the next step is then to vilify them. And he was already doing this. Mischaracterize and vilify and demonize. It's an us versus them mentality. So what can we do? We can think specifically and not generally. What I mean by that is think of me, right? We're close. We know each other. And if that's what you think of me, then we got even bigger problems because as much life as we've gone through together, you don't know me. You're telling me that you don't know me. Either that, or despite what you know about me, you're still making these types of judgments about me. Think specifically and not generally. There's a saying, and I've heard it repeated a number of times here just recently. Terry Moran, the fellow who was let go from ABC, he did a Substack post titled "It's Hard to Hate Somebody Up Close." I think he was quoting Michelle Obama. I've heard it from my friend Liz Joyner, who was just on the show here recently. She has Village Square. It's hard to hate somebody up close. It's hard to hate somebody up close. So think specifically, not generally. Don't make generalizations in order to characterize entire groups of people, because typically you're not characterizing entire groups of people, you're mischaracterizing them. And by mischaracterizing them, it's one short step to vilifying them, to demonizing them, and creating this us versus them mentality. Think specifically, not generally. Now, I want to take a quick break. I usually do this at the beginning, but I figured I'd do something a little bit different. Real quick, subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/at politics and religion. Follow us on your podcast app. If you're already following, great. Follow us on another podcast app and another and another. We could use the downloads. This is weird. I've never done this in the middle, just taking a break and here's your commercial break. Anyway, subscribe to the YouTube channel, follow us on your podcast app, and then review us on all those podcast apps. Leave, hopefully it's a 5-star and it's not, but when you actually write the review, if you can, like on Apple Podcasts, and we have links in the show notes, it really does help. It really does help us in the rankings. And we're starting to show up on some of these. It's really encouraging to see this show start to show up on some of these lists of top podcasts in this category. We showed up on 2 top lists, in both cases, a top 20 for centrist. One was a centrist politics podcast, and one was a spiritual podcast, or maybe it was multi-denominational or multi-faith spiritual podcast. Anyway, it's really encouraging when you leave those write those reviews, and then check out the Substack on all the socials. You can find me on all the socials, but Substack is one where I'm starting to engage a lot more and post a lot more of our content. So that one is at Corey S. Nathan on Substack. And again, we have links in the show notes to make all this stuff easy to find. It all helps so we can continue having these great conversations, exploring big topics, asking really big, pressing questions. Now, thank you for indulging me for that commercial break. Getting back to the topic, we're talking about how to combat the us versus them mindset. And so far, we talked about recognize what it is, especially when I'm doing it or you're doing it. And then think specifically, not generally. Now, recognize what it is, especially when I'm doing it. Think specifically, not generally. The next one is name it. When we recognize when either I'm doing it or when somebody that we're in a conversation with is doing it, name it. Call it for what it is. So I'll give you another illustration. It's weird. Whether it's online or at the local pub or coffee shop or networking meetings, I so often, just something casual at a friend's house, I so often find myself in these conversations. And I have the benefit of having friends with a very diverse range of views. But whether it's a person who's a Trump supporting friend, a Kamala supporting friend, or somebody who's relatively disengaged, it's not. This is the point. It's not just one side or the other, and there isn't just this side and that side. We're all different people. We're all human beings. So, Going back to one of those posts when I was quoting when I quoted the First Amendment, they kept on coming in, and then I had a conversation offline where that was the first impulse that the or first response that the person I was talking to made. Oh yeah, they're all a bunch of losers. They're all I can't go downtown. Meanwhile, I know plenty of people who work downtown, who live downtown. My brother drives through there every morning on his way to work, and it was contained to a couple of blocks. So it was as if it was a war zone. It was being talked about as if it was a war zone. And even here, like we're just a few miles away. This guy, the guy that I was talking to, knows the same thing that I know, but he decided to focus on, oh yeah, all a bunch of freaking, rioters. He called them, oh, every one of them. So I just, I, I had already seen that comment thread when I posted from the First Amendment, and I said something along the lines of I just pointed it out to him. You seem to be making the case that anyone who supports the, in this case, it's the constitutional right to peaceably assemble and to speech, also supports the violence, right? I support, just like, I'll give you a different example. January 6th, 2021, there was the Stop the Steal rally. Obviously, I disagreed with the very premise, strongly disagreed with the very premise of why people were there. But there were thousands of people who were there who exercised their First Amendment rights. I support that. I don't support the people who stormed the Capitol. That was a terrible example of people having a sense of partisanship, having a sense of us versus them, and then breaking into violence because they thought that they were exercising a duty in the us versus them mindset, in the culture war, in the at that point a certain kind of civil war. That's what they were engaging in, right? So in this instance, it's the fellow was looking at it as we were talking about the protests in LA in response to the ICE raids, right? And he was associating anyone who supported the protests as if we also supported the violence. No, no. We can do both at the same time. I don't feel I don't, in a way, I don't even feel the need to engage with the generalizations and the vilifications. I support the First Amendment and all of our constitutional rights. It's as simple as that. So I wanted to try to name what the fellow was doing by making those generalizations and conflations, right? And then it's funny because that thread kept on going and going and going for days. And the same things. It wasn't just the two fellas that commented in the beginning. There were more people who, it was like dogpiling the rabbit. They kept on posting more pictures of people rioting and committing other illegal acts. So finally, I called it out for what it was. And what I said was the point of posting such images seems to be to say, this is what they do, as if anyone who objects even remotely to the actions of the Trump administration are essentially guilty of whatever is represented in the worst images one can find. And in some cases, there was an image taken from a movie that was made in 2002. It wasn't even a picture from what was happening in downtown LA. So it was just rhetorical warfare, meme warfare in a way. It wasn't even intellectually honest. So I went on to say, personally, I never made such conflations, for example, between all those who happen to vote for Trump and those who stormed the Capitol. I wouldn't even conflate those who gathered peacefully that day versus those who stormed the Capitol. And yet this thread is now being bombarded by such bad faith arguments. It's bad faith arguments. That said, I'm heartened to see plenty of others who can hold space for the notion that plenty of us can both condemn violence and looting while also supporting First Amendment rights. We can do both at the same time. And by the way, that's built into the very structure of the First Amendment. If you look at one of the other rights that are articulated in the First Amendment, there's a both end. There's the Establishment Clause and the right to practice one's own religion without the government establishing a religion. You have to have both, or with the freedom of speech and the freedom of assembly. There are the precedents of time, place, and manner boundaries, time, place, and manner restrictions. We have both. We can hold room for both. Okay? So we can condemn violence and looting while also supporting First Amendment rights. And frankly, you might have to keep on making this point again and again and again. to just name it for what it is. Now, if you name it and say this is what you're engaging in, you're saying that there's only two sides, an us and a them, a friend and an enemy, the Carl Schmitt political philosophy. And if you're like, if that's what you're saying, if there are only two kinds of people, the people who agree with me 100% of the time and them, all of them, good luck with that philosophy and us versus them mentality. So if you name it, most folks are going to not just in one conversation, not just by calling it out one time. Sometimes you just have to do it again and again and again because, frankly, there's a lot of people who fall into this mindset without realizing it, fall into this mindset and keep on engaging in it without owning up to it. So you do have to make the point, in some cases with one individual, but there are so many people who fall into it, including me. So yeah, sometimes you're gonna feel like you're banging your head against the wall because you have to say it and name it again and again and again. And there's not a lot of things that it's like a hill to die on. This might be one of them. This might be one of them because it's worth it. There are so many of us that fall into this trap, us versus them thinking. But this one, I'm going to keep on making this argument because it's worth it. This is one of the key symptoms of a larger disease. Now, here's a way that you can change the whole dynamic. So you name it. Let's see, what did I go over so far? Recognize what it is, especially when I'm doing it. Think specifically, not generally. Name it. And here's a way that you can really change the entire dynamic. You can shift our disposition from facing off to side by side. Shift our disposition from facing off to side by side. So going back to how I responded to the one I mentioned earlier, the fella I used to work out with, where was your outrage when? Where was your outrage when? But the way he put it was, where were you all the last 4 years? That comment. So the way I responded to him, instead of like swinging, because I really did, I had so much ammunition to like drop some good ones on him. But I was my better self this time, right? So I said, I can't speak for all, which is where you and I have the most fundamental disagreement. Because I had a lot of disagreements with him, but they were all secondary. They weren't as important as this difference. I said, I can't speak for all, which is where you and I have the most fundamental disagreement. So I shifted. I didn't respond to his arguments. I responded to the way he was making the argument, the very disposition, right? I can't speak for all, which is where you and I have the most fundamental disagreement. My concerns about this particular president and many of the actions of his administration aren't a reflection of how I see you, right? So I'm saying I am relating to you. I don't associate you. I'm not going to make this mistake of saying you guys. So anyone who happened to vote for Trump or supports Trump or whatever, so I shifted the dynamic. I said, I don't see you that way. I said, I respect the reasons you have for having voted the way you did, but the fact that I voted differently on that one line of the ballot, that's just one line of the ballot, doesn't put me on any particular side. So I'm reframing and redefining the whole conversation. I said, if anything, I'm on the side of the Constitution, which I'm sure you'd also consider yourself on the side of. So I created space for both of us to occupy, because I'm sure he does support the Constitution when we talk about it. And I'm not putting out the Constitution to say, well, I support it and you don't. My side supports it and you don't. No. We both are in favor. We both are fans of the Constitution, right? We can agree on that, right? So pointing it out, I'm changing the disposition, I'm reframing the whole thing. Instead of facing off, I'm sitting side by side with them. I'm finding ways to sit side by side with them. So that's one of the most powerful ways that we can fight against this us versus them mentality. But sometimes you got to know when to walk away. I'll give you one last illustration and then we'll start to wrap it up. A few weeks ago, well, you know what? I'm not going to tell you exactly which episode this refers to. I don't want to get into the details of it because I don't want the focus to be on the person that this comment was referring to, or even the issue that this comment was referring to. I just want you to read. I just want to read this comment. I guess I'll go so far as to say this comment was about a local mayor of a small town. And clearly it's an issue that this person feels very passionately about, that this person disagrees with the local mayor about. So Local mayor, very small town. All right. And this is what this person said. Gosh, I'm so tempted to put this person's name and his digits up so everybody could find him, but I don't know. I'm ambivalent about that for various reasons. Anyway, this is what he said. Your friend, and he named my friend, is a real piece of shit fucking loser. Trying to, and then he he mentioned the issue that he's at odds with her about. He goes, "Your friend blank is a real piece of shit fucking loser trying to blank." And then he says, "I swear I hope she has a fatal heart attack on the 4th of July as her family watches." I hope she has a fatal heart attack on the 4th of July as her family watches. Now, this is not, I'm just going to leave that there. Like, it's not to say that we don't have vile thoughts. You know, we're all human. We all have revenge. Not all of us, but a lot of us have revenge in our hearts, have anger and even hatred in our hearts. But there's some sort of a governor that stops us from uttering it, let alone publishing it, let alone writing it to someone. To say such vile, hateful, violent things, right? And this is just one example. I could put up scores of other examples that are much more violent, right? But how does a person get to disagreeing on a policy, a local, dispute, to I hope she has a fatal heart attack on the 4th of July as her not just so that she dies a painful death, but that her family suffers as they watch her die painfully, right? What vile, like, what contempt, how disgusting does someone have to be? How decrepit does one's heart and soul have to be to get to the point where they write such things? So, this is an example of know when to walk away. There is nothing that I have to say to this person. There's nothing that I have to say where I'm not a good enough person, frankly. I'm not a good enough person. Maybe Mother Teresa would be able to embrace this person and kiss them on the head and greet them lovingly. Jesus himself, would have the proper response. Maybe Monty Guzman. I don't know. Maybe David Brooks. I don't know. But I don't have it. I'm not that good of a person. I'm not that. I am disgusted. I'm not disgusted because listen. I see myself in that comment, to be perfectly candid, to confess. But to get to the point where you say it out loud, to get to the point where you write it and share it with someone, it's beyond me. So you got to know when to walk away. So that's what I'll say for today. The us versus them mindset is killing all of us. This person wished death upon someone, not just death upon someone, but that her family would suffer because he had a policy dispute. Like, who the fuck are we when this is happening? And we're saying it out loud. The us versus them mindset is killing all of us. So what can we do? If there's a we, it's the people who are engaged in good faith, right? The people who want to do something better, who want to make our dialogue better, our relationships better, our country better. The us versus them mindset is killing all of us. So what can we do about it? We can recognize what it is, especially when I'm doing it. We can think specifically, not generally. Don't generalize, mischaracterize, and vilify. Think specifically. Think at a human level. Remember. Don't dismember people from your community, but remember them. Think specifically, not generally. Name it. When you see it, when you see somebody engage, you're thinking very generally. You're thinking about your team and my team. Dude, we're all on the same team. Name it. Shift our disposition from facing off to being side by side. Hey, we all love the Constitution, don't we? We all love this country. We all love our kid. I don't know. Like, where's the common ground? Expand the ground of shared space and shared thinking and shared values, the way that Fred Guttenberg and Joe Walsh have exhibited so well over the last couple of years. And then sometimes you just got to know when to walk away. Like I'm not capable of engaging with this individual that said such vile things about another human being. So you got to know when to walk away. And that's what I got today. As always, if you dig what we're doing here, remember to follow the show, write that review, and now you can watch these conversations on YouTube. It's youtube.com/at politics and religion. And I am at Corey S. Nathan. It's Corey, S as in Sam, Nathan, at Corey S. Nathan on all the socials. Now, go talk some politics and religion with gentleness and respect, and have a great week.